You're born somewhere in Italy or the United States. The Mafia originally started in Italy in the 1800s and came to the US in the 1900s, mainly going to big cities like New York and Chicago. This was the very beginning of your own criminal empire. Being a mafia boss meant you were at the top of the criminal world. Power, money, and really anything you wanted was at your fingertips. Except you had a few more years till you were in charge of the entire operation. But even babies in the Mafia had a lot of problems. You had to worry about rival gangs, law enforcement, or even your very own Mafia betraying you. You were a target for kidnapping and even assassination. Yeah, even though you were this cute, people were still trying to assassinate you. If people couldn't get to your dad, who was the Mafia boss for now, then his kid was the next best thing. So I'd be watching your back. Growing up knowing that someone may try to kill you or your family at any time was definitely not the picture-perfect childhood. Not to mention seeing your dad kill people on a daily basis probably wasn't great for you as a kid. Most kids were playing with toys, and you were seeing your dad kill at least 5 people per week, so that probably made you a little messed up in the head. Oh, and the one thing you couldn't do in the Mafia was tell anyone what you've seen, or you'd end up like the guys that your dad took care of, even though you were his son. Mafia bosses were known for being insanely rich, but one of the most famous and the most rich was Al Capone. He had an estimated net worth of $100 million at the height of his criminal career, which would be about $1.5 billion in today's money. I don't know about you, but if the Mafia is making that kind of money, then sign me up immediately. I don't care if I need to clean the toilets, just let me join, please. The way the Mafia made money was smuggling, manufacturing, and distributing drugs and alcohol, lending money to people at insanely high interest rates, usually people or businesses in desperate need of some cold hard cash, and when the borrower couldn't repay, well, the Mafia would take the matters into their own hands. And let me tell you, it would not be pretty. Another way they made money was gambling, both legal and illegal. They operated illegal bookmaking, which meant taking bets on sports, ran underground casinos, and organized illegal lotteries. They even went as far as rigging professional sports. They could pay a coach, athlete, or referee an insane amount of money to make sure the team they were betting on won the game. This was one of the most famous ways the Mafia made money, and probably the worst way they made money was human trafficking. This is a little too graphic for me to get into, but just know it was as bad as it sounds. From an early age, children born into Mafia families were taught to keep secrets. Mafia families often lived in private estates, away from everyone else, where they could control who came in and out of their lives. You'd likely be kept away from schoolmates or other children who weren't part of the family's trusted circle. Your only friends were the bodyguards your family always had around you, sometimes even at your own home. This made your house feel like a fortress with bodyguards always around you. By the time you hit your teens, you started helping out more with the family business. Stuff like running errands, collecting money, or even acting as a messenger for the family business. It wasn't fun work, but hey, at least you weren't killing anyone. Yet. Your next couple of years were used to reinforce loyalty and discipline. Mafia members were taught the importance of the omerta, or the code of silence and loyalty to your family above everything else. Your parents made it very clear that you should never talk to law enforcement or anyone you didn't know about your family business. Family honor must come before everything else, and I mean everything. Some of the most famous weapons the Mafia used and that you had to train with were your everyday pistols and revolvers. Some stuff like a Colt 45 and a Colt Python. And besides revolvers and pistols, they used shotguns, submachine guns, assault rifles, and explosives. These guys were famous for putting bombs in cars and making them explode the second their unlucky target got back into their car. And let me tell you, there's no way anyone's surviving that. By far, the gun they are most known for is the Tommy gun. This bad boy was iconic for all Mafia members and could get any job done that you needed it to do. 1 person, 1 bullet? No problem. 10 people? No problem. A 400-pound massive guy that looks like he can snap you in half with one hand? Now, that might be a little bit of a problem. Switchblades and bulletproof cars were also common for the Mafia. You needed something for hand-to-hand combat, and of course, who wouldn't want a bulletproof car? After all, almost everyone in your city was trying to kill you. There wasn't a specific age you became a mafia boss. Some got promoted in their mid-20s, some in their 30s, and even some over 40 years old. But now that you're hitting your mid-20s and you spent your entire childhood and teens doing the dirty work, it was about time you finally became the big boss. Now that you are finally the boss, your life immediately got worse. As if you weren't in enough danger as a kid, the second you became the boss, almost everyone wanted you dead. The police, rival gangs, and even some of the mafia members that are supposed to be your closest family. Mafia bosses couldn't work in public without being aware of their surroundings and the risk of being shot, stabbed, or poisoned. Most of the time, it was so bad you'd have to be surrounded by bodyguards. The police were always actively working to gather evidence, wiretap, infiltrate, or bring you and the mafia down, whether that was killing you or putting you behind bars for the rest of your life. It didn't matter how much wealth or influence you had, they were coming for you. Once you became the mafia boss, maintaining your position was a full-time job. You had to control your family, keep alliances strong, punish disloyalty, and make sure no one was trying to take your spot. Younger, more aggressive mafia members were always plotting to take over. Age was seen as a liability, and let's face it, you weren't getting any younger and definitely weren't getting any prettier. By the time you hit your 30s, it was about that time to find yourself a wife and have some of your own kids. After all, someone had to be the boss of the mafia after you. Mafia bosses often had to make the difficult choice between loyalty to their own family and their mafia family. You may have had a wife and kids, but after all, running a billion-dollar crime organization was just a little more stressful than your everyday job. Like I said earlier, you had an insane amount of money, and I mean a lot of money. But unfortunately for you, you were also at high risk of losing everything. Legal troubles, law enforcement crackdowns, or shifting political climates could take down your entire empire. Many bosses who escaped prison lost everything because of the collapse of their criminal empire while they were gone. This wasn't uncommon. Many mafia bosses either spent significant time in prison or were assassinated. Yeah, those were really your two main options, going to prison or being assassinated. I'm gonna go with option C, stay home and hide in my closet. Unfortunately, it's not big enough for both of us, so you have to keep being the boss. Now that you're reaching your 40s, it's about time I tell you that the life expectancy of a mafia boss was all over the board, and it was actually surprisingly high. Sure, some died in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, but most of the time it was because they were murdered, not from natural causes. And if they died from old age, they were either in prison or deported out of the United States. The stress of the lifestyle took a physical toll, especially in older age. Take a look for yourself. Here are some examples of the most famous mafia bosses. Al Capone died at 48 from syphilis after serving time in prison. John Gotti died at 61 from throat cancer while in prison. Paul Castellano was murdered at 70, assassinated outside a Manhattan restaurant. And Lucky Luciano died at 64 from a heart attack after being deported out of the country. Luckily for you, you weren't dying anytime soon. Oh! Well, this is a little awkward. I guess I'll just let you have your moment in peace, huh? All right. Are you dead yet? No? Well, I guess this is what you get for being born as a mafia boss, so, good luck.